What's up, guys? I'm just on my way to work, just leaving my house, and I figure, if you want, sit with me for the next 15 minutes while I drive to work, and then, do whatever you want to do afterwards. When I make these videos, it's a gamble. It really is a gamble, because every time I turn on the camera and I start talking, most of the time you don't know what's going to come out. You know what I mean? Like, you have no idea how you're going to say the things that you want to say. And, even though you have an idea of what you want to talk about and what you want to say, how you convey that message, when the camera's on and you're standing there right in front of it, it can totally come out, just unlike what you thought it would come out as. So making these videos, as I've found over years, it's harder than you think. Something about it is just, it's oddly difficult to get behind a camera and just start speaking your mind about whatever it is you want to speak your mind about. And, it's one of those things you get more comfortable with time. And sometimes too, when you start talking, and when you make one of these videos, a lot of the time it just comes down to what kind of mood you're in and what kind of flow you're in. If you're stuck in your head, these videos are pretty hard to make. And it's pretty hard to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. But I do find that if you're in a kind of flow and you turn on the camera and you start talking, it's just easier. But you're not always in flow, And that's just the truth. You're not always in the place where you're like operating from true authenticity. I don't know if authenticity is the right word, but from just a place of peace. If you catch my gist, But speaking about peace and having your own peace in this life, I think there's one thing that really makes a huge difference, and that is accepting that you're not going to be liked by everybody. And not everyone is going to want to be your friend. Not every woman out there is going to want to date you or have sex with you. And that no matter what, there's going to be people out there who just hate you and don't like you. And I think it's typical for all of us to fall into the pattern of thinking where we start to think, when somebody doesn't like us, but they like somebody else, what is wrong with me? Why don't they like me? Did I say something wrong? Did I do something wrong? Did I piss them off in some way? What is wrong with me? And I think there's a balance. There's a balance between not caring and being self-aware whenever it comes to this kind of thing. Because if it's a bunch of people that don't like you and you notice a trend, then it probably is something about yourself. And so there's things that you do have to take into consideration, of course. But if you find that most people don't have a problem with you, most people do like you, most people, aren't put off by you, but then there are a few that just are, you're not doing anything wrong. Particularly if there's people that really, really like you and love you, couple that with people that don't like you. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just being who you are. And when you are yourself, it attracts the right people and it deflects the wrong people. And so, it's obviously a very overstated, over talked about, maybe even cliche thing to talk about here, but there's a reason why it's cliche. And it's cliche because it's true. And it holds up no matter how old you are, what time you live in, or where you live. And it's an important thing that we need to be reminded of, because so many people, myself included, we lose ourselves to the mob mentality, to the hive mentality. You know, we think we have to be like somebody else to be accepted and appreciated. By who? By people that we don't really like ourselves? By people that we don't really have a connection with in the first place? If we're honest with ourselves? You know? Like, who are we trying to impress out here? Who are we trying to be accepted by? And yes, the answer is obvious. Why? But it all comes down to just remembering who we are, what we're here for, what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, what we really like and what we really don't like. What our actual boundaries are. And you just, knowing when it's the right time to say yes and knowing when it's the right time to say no. And how important that is. Because if you lose sight of that, you lose sight of yourself. You lose sight of your authentic nature. So, in my time and in my life, there's been, times where I felt like I couldn't relate to certain people. And no matter how hard I try to talk to these people, and no matter how many different times I try to bring up different points of conversation with them, it just never seemed to stick. But other people around me seem to click with these people. They seem to get along with them. They seem to have more of a connection. But I didn't. I'd often wonder, why is it that I can't have a connection with this person that everyone else seems to like, that everyone else seems to find cool? You know what I mean? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? It's like, why do I find this person off-putting, or maybe not off-putting, but I just don't find them to be super interesting. And they don't seem to find me super interesting. But they seem to have that with other people. Other people around me who I have a connection with. But this one person, for whatever reason, I don't have a connection with them. And, I think the conclusion I've come to at the end of it all is that you just don't have a connection with them. This is not a person you're supposed to really get close with. And just because somebody else, my God, what a fucking shitbox car, dude. Holy shit. That dude just sprayed diesel like all over the place. Anyways, back to the main point here. Where was I at? Yeah, dude, just knowing and being okay with the fact that not everyone you talk to and not everyone you try to get to know is going to be super interested in getting to know you. And, even if you try really hard and you try to see if there's a connection there and you try to relate to them, you're just going to find sometimes there just isn't a connection. There isn't any basis that you guys can relate on, and that's fine. That's okay. You don't need to change who you are or keep forcing something that isn't there to feel right about something. Some things just are as they are. And so again, it brings me back to the main point. You're here on this earth to connect with the people that are your people. You're here to connect with the people that match your energy. You're here to connect with the people that add something to your life. not just fill up space so you don't feel alone. And you're not going to relate to everybody, and that's okay. Not everyone's going to relate to you, and that's also okay. You know, whoever said the quote, I think it was Robin Williams. He said that it's better off to be by yourself than be around people who make you feel by yourself. And I don't think it was by yourself. I think it was alone. I think he used the word alone. But you get the point. I'd rather be by myself doing my own thing than be around a bunch of people who I don't relate to, who don't match my energy, who don't match my vibe, and then try to change myself to fit whatever it is they want to see in me. And of course, you should try to be more open. You shouldn't try to be super closed off. You can become too introverted. You can obviously, miss out on a lot of things by choosing to, be really secluded and whatnot because you really just like being alone. So there comes a point where you should say yes more often. But if you find with certain things or with certain people that you just don't really have a good time with these people, you don't feel that vibe, you don't feel that connection between you two, then it's okay to say no. Because if you keep saying yes to shit you don't really want to do, and you keep trying to be like these people around you who don't really like you and you don't really like yourself, just so you can fit something that you think they want in you, you're going to lose yourself. You're going to lose your identity. So I don't know how many times I've probably rambled on about the same thing in this video in different ways. I've probably made my point. But I've realized that a lot of, unhappiness and discontentment in life comes from the approval of other people. And a lot of people carry this energy with themselves, that they want to be approved by the people that they're around, even if they're not totally aware of it. They want to just be liked and accepted so badly. And they might achieve that for a little while, but what they lose is themselves. So with all that said, understand that no matter who you are in this world, there's always going to be people that don't like you, that don't want to talk to you, that don't want to date you, that don't want to be your friend. No matter who you are, no matter what it is that you do, no matter what kind of opinion that you have. So your best bet is to just be what is authentically true to yourself. Because when you're authentically true to yourself, that's when the best people come into your life. And even though it may be a small group of people and it may be less people than it was before, they're a more quality type of person. They're people that will have your back when shit goes down. And they're people that you can connect to and relate to, who you understand and they understand you. So go out there, be who you are, do what you want, because at the end of the day, nobody really gives a shit. And you have nothing to lose. And if there were people that left, they weren't real close to you. They weren't really close to you to begin with. So I think I'm going to cut this one off. I just got to work. Anyways, peace and blessings all. I'll see you soon.